Hey everyone, welcome back to Gracie May's Tarot. So today we have a video that was requested by a subscriber. We're going to be meeting your shadow self. So who is your shadow self? What do you need to know about your shadow? How can you integrate your shadow? How can you help heal your shadow? What do you need to know? We're also going to include, if we have time, a mini self-care reading at the end. I'm just gonna kind of play it by ear. If the video feels like it's too long, I might just upload a separate self-care video on the day that I upload the shadow reading. So just keep that in mind, but we'll just see how it goes. All right, so we have 3 groups to choose from today. For pile 1, we have this pretty dark maroon color. For pile 2, we have this sort of raspberry red. And then for pile 3, we have a color that looks pretty, is this black? Yeah, we have black. All right, so 3 groups to choose from. Timestamps are in the description box, just like always, and I will see you guys in your reading. Hi, pile 1, welcome to your reading. So we're gonna start off with your tarot. I'm really excited for this reading. So if you want to see more videos like this, you can put some suggestions down in the comments. Definitely trying to expand the topics on the channel. I love doing the romance-related readings, but it's definitely fun to mix it up. So this is a new deck. My brother actually sent this to me for Christmas, so I'm excited to finally get around using it in a video. Anyway, pile 1, what do we need to know about your shadow? Let's meet your shadow, pile 1, please, Spirit. And a big thank you to my guides and your guides for coordinating these messages, as well as a big thank you to your shadow for introducing themselves and showing up in this reading. And so obviously, this isn't going to be the most cheerful, happy reading. It may get difficult, but you know, it's important. Definitely important for all of us. And then I'll go ahead and say needles in this deck are the swords cards. We have and I will be taking like reversals into account, but I just put them all upright. If you're new to my channel, I have a tendency just to leave them all upright, and then I just read all the cards in the context that they come out together. So I read them like a story. And also, I feel like the shuffling may take a little bit longer today, just because, I mean, it's your shadow, so they might need a little bit of coaxing to come out, you know? By definition, your shadow is relegated to the darkness, right? So sometimes it's hard to open that up. We'll also ask your higher self to come through and help out. This card I am feeling. I think I want to get... I hear my cat doing something destructive. Sorry, I think I want to get one more card. Okay. So, I'm glad that I did. So we have the 4 of Swords. We have the King of Presents. This is the King of Pentacles in this deck. We have the 9 of Wands, or the 9 of Candles, and the 9 of Presents, or the 9 of Pentacles. Okay, right off the bat, I feel like there is, and it makes so much sense to me that you're pile 1, like this message is coming through clear as a bell. And I say it's not surprising because my pile 1s tend to be my ambitious people, my natural born leaders. Even if you're resistant to that, you're good at it. My people who are good at organization when they want to, my self-disciplined people, my highly self-critical people, my type A people. Just in generally speaking, that tends to be the vibe that comes through with pile 1. And your shadow is coming through and saying the difficulty here is that you feel like no matter how hard you work, it's like you never have a sense of security. They're telling me that you could be blessed with financial success beyond your wildest dreams. Like you could be making over 6 figures a year. Like you could be making an incredible salary. You could own your own business, be totally self-sufficient. You could have your dream job, your dream position. You could even win the lottery. They're telling me, like, there's still this this fear, though, this fear of not having enough, of being worried about that security, being worried about your material security. There's a sense of like the world is unsafe, and constantly sort of being in this survival mode. And the results of that, how that manifests, is that you always feel like you're not doing enough. Like even when you're trying to take a break, even when you're trying to rest, you're thinking about everything that you have to do, and you feel like there's so many messages coming forward. It's all kind of like rushing in. They're telling me that even when you're resting, you're going mentally through your to-do list, so even your rest time isn't restful. And they're telling me that you never feel like you can slow down because you don't feel like you're good enough. You feel like you have to work twice as hard as everybody else just to keep up, and even if it's not comparing yourself to others, it's comparing yourself to like a past version of yourself. Like, well, I used to could do this, so like I need to keep being able to like operate at that same capacity. And it's like, well, you can't work at that same capacity that you used to because you're burned out, because you were working beyond your means for so long. This burnout was inevitable, and it's like you can't accept the burnout. You're like, no, I used to be able to do this, so I should always be able to function at 110%, and that's just not realistic. Your standards for yourself are so high, and and it's almost like you have this inability to celebrate your success, celebrate your wins, because it's never enough. Like even when you meet a major goal, you're thinking of like, well, what's next? You're always trying to outdo yourself, and it's just never enough. Like you could have 9 presents in front of you and you're focused on achieving the next one. You're so fixated on it, and it's to the detriment, they're telling me, of not only your mental, emotional, spiritual, physical well-being, but it's to the detriment of other areas of your life. You are so focused on go, 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 I've got to achieve this goal and that goal. You're so goal-oriented, but anything in an extreme or for the wrong reasons, right, can be harmful. And they're telling me that other areas of your life are sacrificed because you put so much of your intention and so much of your focus on growing this material abundance. You're very focused on the earthly kind of concerns, and that's not to say that you're not a spiritual person. I mean, you clicked on a tarot reading, right? It's not saying that, but it's just saying it's almost like you feel like you have to prove yourself, even to the point where you almost feel like your guides would be disappointed in you, or you're not answering your soul's purpose. Like this feeling of like, well, what if I'm doing all this work and I'm not even working to achieve my higher purpose? Like you even have anxiety about that. Like you just worry so much about, am I doing the right thing? Like, is all this hard work going to pay off? And it's, again, like that ambition, that self-discipline is great, but it's funny that this is the needles, right? It's like even your rest feels kind of like it's harmful because it's not true rest. It's not a true break. Like it's just kind of makes me think of like, you're sewing something. Like even when you are supposed to be resting, you're weaving a story of like, this is what I gotta do after this. This is what, I'm taking this time out, so I've got to work extra hard tomorrow to catch up. There's so much guilt and shame around taking a break and resting. Like your self-worth is so immersed in that need to be productive. And I relate to that so much, but your shadow is saying, like, it's okay for us to slow down. Like your shadow's like, you know, it's that fear, you know, it's that fear that like if you stop, you're never gonna have that security, but you're never gonna have that security because you're always gonna be so worried about something happening. So I think anxiety is also fueling a lot of this. You know, you kind of worry about unexpected expenses, right? Like you're worried about your car breaking down and then what's going to happen if you can't get to work, stuff like that. And it's not that that's not a valid fear, but is that fear serving you? Is having that worry serving you? I think it would be helpful for you to kind of think about, A, you can trust your future self to handle future problems, and B, it doesn't, until it happens, don't worry about it. You know, like until it's a problem, let's not create problems. You know, like let's use our imagination to fuel our creativity and not fuel our anxiety, you know? Okay, let's get some archetype cards here. Pile 1, who is your shadow? What do we need to know, pile 1? Who is your shadow? And if this message isn't resonating, then feel free to pick a different group because, you know, if the message is like blurry or not quite clear, I definitely try to say that, but this one is, I mean, there's no, no minced words here. Like, it's a pretty direct message, pretty loud and clear. Pile 1. Who is your shadow? What do we need to know? Pile 1, who is your shadow? Pile 1 shadow, can you introduce yourself? We're gonna get one more card. I love this. I love this so much. I really do. You have the artist and the athlete. And when this card initially came out, I was like, oh, I see. And then this came out and I was like, perfect picture painted, yes. If you think of like high school, like teen dramas, right? You know, they're like really corny, like teen movies. There's always like this, you know, different cliques, right? And so like the art kids and the nerds and the jocks and the athletes, you know, there's all of these different social groups, right? And like the artists and the athletes would be pretty at odds, right? And that's how it feels like. It feels like there's this push and pull between you and your shadow self, you know? There's this artist in you that I think wants to come out, and it's kind of repressed by this athlete version of you that is quite disciplined. Like when I think of an athlete, I think of someone who is sticking to a schedule, someone who is watching what they're eating, someone who is practicing, someone who is disciplined in how they speak to their teammates, someone who is disciplined in their workout routine, and you know, like whatever practice drills they have to do for whatever sport they're in. I don't know a lot about sports or athleticism, but I think you get what I'm saying. It's very regimented, right? It's very structured. An artist, the opposite. There is no schedule, there is no routine. It's very free-flowing, go with the flow, you know, create when inspiration strikes, you know, being messy, exploring, having fun with it, taking a lighthearted approach, you know, this is very like adults versus child, you know. I feel like this is sort of your natural mode, and then this is what you were taught to be. And so this could have been This sort of dynamic could have been placed upon you in childhood. You could have come from a family where there was a scarcity mentality. You could have come from a lower socioeconomic background, and so you were taught like you have to work hard to earn anything, and that's the roadmap to being successful is hard work. And so this time for creativity and play is kind of thrown out the window, right? There's no time to explore. There's no time to consider all your options. You just have to go and do something and commit to it and work really hard. You don't have the freedom to change your college major 4 times if you even get to go to college, stuff like that. Or you could have just been in a family where everyone was really successful, and that was just the expectation that you were going to be successful, and success was defined in material ways, and so that became your definition of success. I feel like that word is so important to you, and I don't think that you're quite happy with yourself until you've achieved this idealized version of success that is very rooted, again, in the material world, very rooted in money, finances, status symbols, your clothes, your car, things like that. But I think there's this artist in you that just wants to play and have fun and explore. And, whether that's literally creating art or just having, again, that like childlike mentality of like, I just want to go somewhere, do something different, meet new people, have new experiences. I don't want to feel trapped, like chained to a desk and working all day, that kind of thing. So, And it's funny, these cards actually have shadow attributes, but the actual titles of the card were calling to me more than anything, but I will read these to you in case you're curious. It says shadow attributes: using talent as an excuse to mistreat others, posing as the starving artist to elicit pity. And then we have misuse of athletic ability for selfish ends, false sense of invulnerability, and entitlement. Okay, so let's get some more oracle cards for you. And we can move this. This is kind of irritating to me. Okay. Sorry, there's kind of a lot of noise. Give me 1 second. Alright, sorry guys. Alright, pile 1. Let's find out some more information about your shadow. Your shadow's been quite talkative. Like, kudos to them for being brave and sharing with us. Pile 1. What do we need to know about your shadow? Pile 1. Okay, we have storm. As within and so without, there are storms a-coming, change without a doubt. I think that's quite difficult for you. Again, it's that fear of the unexpected, the fear of the future. There's that saying that if you're living in the past, you're depressed, and if you're living in the future, you're anxious. And I think you, pile 1, live in the future, and that's your shadow is saying, like, there is so much fear around the future and preparing for the future, and you're missing the now. Like, you're missing out on the present moment. You can't connect to joy because you are so concerned with tomorrow that you can't enjoy today. And that may sound corny, but that's where you're at. And so Spirit is kind of saying, as well as your shadow, these storms are gonna come. Like, they're going to come regardless. And so you kind of have to you kind of have to accept that. Like, there's no getting around it. There's going to be difficult challenges, difficult cycles. The best you can do is just try to meet them as they come. But you can't miss out on your blue skies because you're searching for rain. Do you know what I mean? Like you just have to accept that the storms will come, but the storms will also pass. And I think sometimes too, maybe for a lot of you, again, like there was a lot of instability in your childhood. Maybe you moved a lot. Maybe finances were really tough. I don't want to name a lot of traumatic things, but if you had a childhood that you would view as traumatic, then you can understand how that would manifest in your adulthood with clinging to what you have. And in some ways that's positive. Like for myself, for example, I did grow up with a very unstable childhood in like many ways. And so when it came to like my material possessions, and even as an adult I'm the same way, I take really good care of my stuff. And it's not even intentional, it's just how I am, because that's how it's always been. Like you wouldn't be rough on your shoes, you wouldn't just be throwing your nice winter coat in the floor. Like you would hang it up and take care of it, because you don't know when you're going to get another winter coat. That winter coat may need to last you for several years, so you're going to treat it really well because you don't know when you're going to get another coat, right? And so that's how it was when I was a child, and that has just carried over and into my adulthood. Like I just take care of my things. I'm a really clean and tidy person because like I see the value in it, and I know what it's like to not have basic things that you need. And so you may have that to some degree where, you know, you just find yourself being very, very careful with things, and that may even be that you're so careful that you don't even like to use them, because sometimes it can go into that thing where like, oh, these are my nice dishes and I will not use these dishes, you know, because I don't want them to get messed up. But the whole point of having those dishes is to use them, you know, like that kind of thing. I think you guys get what I'm saying. But yeah, I think that is something that, you know, your shadow tries to keep you safe, I think, more than anything. And your shadow is really scared of not feeling safe. Like safety and security, success, like the 3 S's for you. Like those are your top priorities. And then we have Yule log. Insert me with the bleeding thought, a sacred creation birthed from thy. I am God, I am goddess, I am creation and the creator. Yeah, like I feel like you were taught nothing is handed to you in this world. And if you want anything, you have to work for it, you have to fight for it, you got to get out there and get yours, because no one is giving you a handout. Nothing in life comes easy. You know, things like that, like really like these bleak kind of messages. And yeah, like they make you a hard worker, but you're working yourself to death. Like, and to what end, you know? And sometimes it is okay to ask for help, and that doesn't make you weak, and that doesn't make you a failure. And sometimes it's okay to give up if something isn't resonating with you, and it's like you were never given that opportunity to explore and find your path and quit things and try new things. Like you were never given that like freedom to do that. You know, like there's just so much focus on like your identity is so linked to that idea of like, what have I achieved? And your happiness cannot be measured by your productivity. And there's just, again, so much guilt, so much shame around that. I also think that you have a tendency to have a bit of trouble with separating thoughts from emotions and feelings. I think that if you were to see a therapist, cognitive behavioral therapy would be a good option for you, or anyone who just operates from that perspective, that modality. But yeah, I feel like you mistake your thoughts for your feelings, and that gets you into trouble like quite a bit, because you're not just processing your emotions and releasing them and letting them go, or just feeling them and, you know, being done with it. I feel like you repress them, you push them down, and then you tell yourself, this is what I should be feeling, this is what I should be doing. There's a lot of shoulds happening, which is a very common, like, I should be doing X, it should be like this. That's a common cognitive distortion, and if you're interested in it, you can Google cognitive distortions, CBT, and you'll see a whole list of them pop up. And you can kind of go through and see like which one of these, you know, do I do. But yeah, there's a whole list of cognitive distortions, and I think understanding those would actually be really helpful for you. But I think you think a lot. I think you're in your head a lot. You may be a maladaptive daydreamer. You know, you prefer to be in your head more than anything else. I feel like you're one of those people where your mind is never quiet. There's like a constant narration going on. You know, you probably suffer from insomnia. It's difficult for you to go to sleep or to get a deep sleep. And I feel like, again, you overthink and you confuse those thoughts with facts and with feelings. And then when your emotions do finally bubble to the surface, I think they're very, very overwhelming for you. Okay, so we have VR Beach, experience life through a new set of eyes, perspective, self-awareness, and new experiences. I feel like you also have a tendency to be almost too mindful of what other people are going through, and you put yourself in their shoes because, again, like, I think you have a very vivid imagination. I do think you have an artistic, creative side to you, and you honestly could probably be a really great writer, or anything that involves writing. But anyway, it's almost like you're overly empathetic with other people, and then sometimes it's hard for you to separate like your feelings from someone else's feelings. And I think that comes out more in family relationships and romantic partnerships, or like really close friendships. But I think that you're really affected by other people's energies and other people's moods and other people's thoughts. And I think that you've absorbed that a lot. And I don't think you sometimes recognize that until it's taking quite a toll on you. And I think sometimes you let other people slide by or disrespect your boundaries, if you're even able to set them and maintain them, because you over empathize with other people. And, you know, it's almost like your self-awareness is too heightened. Like you're so aware of everything that you're doing, and you're so self-reflective because you're in your head so much that just becomes criticism. You know, you're so good at figuring out what you're not doing right and what you can improve upon, but you're not quite so good at applauding yourself or taking some time to be grateful for your blessings and for what you're doing right, you know? And it's also like you attribute your successes to, almost like you attribute your successes to your hard work without really understanding how talented or how smart you are. You know, it's like you ignore all your other positive qualities and you put everything into how self-disciplined and hardworking you are. And that's something that you do, right? That's not something that's inherent. So when you start to slip up, that's your best quality, right? Or like what you're perceiving as your best quality. So your self-esteem just plummets if you're not working really hard, because you have this view of yourself as this really hard-working person. And so when you're having a lazy or off day, you take that as like a character flaw, and it's not. It's just a natural part of, our energies fluctuate. That's just life. Yeah, so I think it would really benefit you to see other positive qualities about yourself and your innate talents that I think you tend to minimize, or your positive characteristics. All right, we have energy field, get back what you put into the universe, manifestation, attraction, and momentum. I feel like Spirit is like the one thing we want you to learn in this lifetime, and the one thing that pushing away your shadow is really harming you with is that you're not understanding how to co-create with us. You're not understanding how to co-create with the universe. Co-create even with your shadow. Like, don't push your shadow away. Like, welcome them to the table. Like, it's all of this, like, focus on what can I do, and not asking for help even from your guides. Like, for you to learn how to use the law of attraction, you would be unstoppable, because you take inspired action all day long, but you don't know how to sit down, rest, and wait and receive. And that's the issue. That's the crux of it. And I feel like with energy field, that's just picking up on what I was saying before about you absorbing other people's energies. I just sort of recognize that. I have a tendency with the oracle cards to lay them down and then focus on one and ignore the others. And then I'll be talking about something and then I'll look over and I'll see it. I don't know why I do that with the oracle, but I absolutely don't do that with the tarot. Like, it's such a weird thing. All right, your bottom of the deck is Haunted Staircase. Don't let what ifs haunt you, regrets, unsaid words, missed opportunities. How perfect is this card for a shadow reading? So many of us can relate to this card, pile one. I mean, this is probably going to be a recurring theme throughout the piles. I won't be surprised if this card shows up in pile 2 or pile 3. We'll just have to see. But this can haunt you. This right here can haunt you. And it's funny because I think when you do look back on the past, you do so in a way where you're looking at, where did I take a wrong turn? And if I had gone down that path, what would my future look like now? It's almost like even when you're looking back to the past, you're still thinking about the future. It's kind of this odd paradox, but it's the what if. Like, what if I had done this instead? What if I had done that? Because again, it's all about your ambition. Like, it comes back to that ambition and that wishing you had done or said something else. And how would that have furthered you along in your path? Because I think also a lot of the time, you are so focused on yourself and your own self-development. And again, that fuels that self-criticism. But it also kind of makes you separated from other people. Like, you don't have a lot of energy to give to other people because you're so focused on bettering yourself. Is bettering yourself great for the collective? Yes, but it feels more like you're beating yourself up for not being where you think you should be than you actually engaging in self-improvement. Okay? And I know these are like tough messages to hear, but again, it's a shadow reading, so kind of the name of the game. So we're going to get a zodiac sign to see kind of like what the energy is for your shadow. And we'll be looking at, the less idealistic version of the sign. So pile 1, how is your shadow showing up astrologically? Cancer. Yeah, with Cancer, I do think of this self-isolation. I think of the hard outer shell of the crab. And you may be in your home a lot. You may be a homebody. You may even be like slightly agoraphobic in some ways. Like, it's hard for you to go outside. You kind of have to force yourself. There may be some issues with social anxiety. And again, like that feeling of like the world being unsafe. Or you may just be like so focused on your studies, so focused on your work, your goals, like you don't leave the house that much because you're working so much and you're having all these different projects and researching things and again, just trying to work on yourself. And that over-identification with other people that we were picking up on, like being too sensitive to other people's needs, but then like weirdly being withdrawn, that kind of makes sense now that we have Cancer coming out, because Cancer is so emotionally intelligent. But the thing with Cancer is that they can feel so deeply, very similar to Scorpio, and because they feel so much, that's overwhelming, right? And so if you are in sort of the detriment of this sign and you're not in the higher vibrational state of this sign, what that can look like is I'm feeling things so strongly that I'm overwhelmed by it, and it's a lot easier for me to repress, push it down, and think my way through this instead. Rely on my mind rather than my heart. I can't do it like that. I can't feel this much, so I'm not going to feel it all. I'm going to try to numb myself to that. And again, like we're talking about the darker, the shadow side of this sign. And I do think that there is this, it's almost like you're scared to get to know your feelings, you know? You're scared to explore that too much because it isn't rational, it isn't logical, and it's not really conducive to getting as much done as you need to get done throughout your day. You know, like I think it would maybe help you to start to see rest and self-care and engaging even in shadow work and processing your feelings and all of that stuff is productive. You know, if you take that time out, you can return to your work and your responsibilities at 100% instead of operating constantly at, I don't know, like 60% because you're tired and you're going and you're going and you're going and you're never giving yourself enough time to recuperate your energy, right? You're not invincible, pile one, and you don't need to feel that way. It's okay, like you're not, yeah, there's some perfectionism going on here too. It's just that feeling of like, I'm not enough on my own, you know, and because I don't feel like I'm enough, I have to prove myself. And that could come from your parents, you know, that could come from past heartbreak with romantic partners, both, you know, bullying as a kid, anything like that. But just this feeling of like, I'm not good enough, so I have to prove myself over and over again, and nothing ever gives me that sense of security and feeling like I am enough. You know, like there's this fear of there's fear of being incompetent, you know, this fear of not being able to handle things, even though you're quite capable of handling things. All right, let me just see. All right, we're at 38 minutes, so I'm going to end this reading, but again, if you want the self-care messages for you guys, obviously I do highly recommend it, but I'm going to have it in a separate reading because I don't want these videos to go on for too long. All right, thank you, Pile One. Thank you so much for letting me do this reading for you. Thank you for hanging in there. Please consider liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, hitting the notification bell so you always know when I upload. Please consider watching the ads as well. That's the easiest way to support the channel. I'm so grateful to anyone who chooses to do any of those things I just named. Yeah, so much love, so much support. Best of luck to you with everything that you're trying to achieve and everything that you're trying to do, Pile One. I wish you well, take care of yourself, and I'll see you in my next one. Hey Pile 2, welcome to your reading. So, we'll be using the Nightmare Before Christmas Tarot deck. My little brother got this for me this past Christmas, so I'm really excited to use it in a reading. And this reading was requested by a subscriber, in case you skipped the intro. So just a huge shout out to that subscriber, a big thank you to them. And also a thank you to my guides and your guides for coordinating these messages, as well as a thank you to your shadow for coming through and meeting us today. All right, pile 2, what do you need to know about your shadow? What is your shadow wanting to tell you? Who is your shadow? Pile 2. Pile 1 was a very straightforward message, so kind of curious to see what you all get. And like I was telling pile 1, when cards come out in reverse like this, I do turn them upwards. But I'm just reading the cards like as a story, so I read them within like the whole context, so I don't really stress about uprights versus reversals. That's difficult to say. I just take everything as one story, okay? You know, I just read the energy of the card and what feels right to me with my intuition. All right, pile 2. You have to be a little bit silly in a reading like this because it can get quite heavy. And I tend also to be really calm and kind of cheerful, so I'm sorry, my cat has the zoomies. That was really loud. Gracie, what is wrong with you? So if I'm talking about something really heavy and I'm making a joke about it, or, you know, I still sound very like monotone about it, doesn't mean that I'm not having compassion or I'm not feeling for you. It's just how I am. I didn't give that disclaimer in pile 1, so it kind of makes me wonder like what's gonna go on with you that we had to say that. Or I felt called to say that. Okay, so we have the 6 of Presents, or the 6 of Pentacles. We have the 10 of Potions, or the 10 of Cups. We have the 3 of Potions, or the 3 of Cups. And we have the Moon here. Interesting to get the Moon in a shadow reading, because the Moon signifies something that is hidden. So it kind of feels like your shadow is quite large, kind of imposing a bit. I feel like sometimes your shadow, not that your shadow intends to do this, but I think that your shadow can overwhelm you at times. I think that you're more familiar with your shadow than pile 1 was. I don't think pile 1 had a real recognition of their shadow, but I think that you and your shadow have more interactions with each other in a way. And I say that because of the Moon being here, but also because of the way your minor arcana are depicted. They feel quite large, like there's something looming, right? There's something growing, like they are stacked on each other and reaching upwards, and there's a top hat. These are suspended in the air and growing through the smoke. These ghosts are also kind of looming on top of each other, like feels like even this, like the way the little hill here is curling over the Moon, like it feels like a shadow is rising and enveloping. And it's not in like a sinister way, but it's almost like your shadow comes out and tries to hold you. Like, it's a very sweet message, actually. It feels like your shadow, with the best of intentions, tries to hold you, tries to bring you into the dark, bring you closer to them. It's like your shadow wants to comfort you, but they don't know quite how to do that, and it can feel a bit scary. You know, it can feel like, I think for you, it comes off as like this overwhelming sense of panic, like I'm feeling too much. But it's almost like, you know, when you get in those like bad crying fits, like you cry, and I'm not talking about like tears. I'm talking about like sobbing, like you cry and you feel it in your throat, you feel it in your belly, you're shaking, you're the kind of crying where like you have to fall to your knees, you know, you have to lock yourself away, like you couldn't cry like that in public, you know, like snot everywhere, like, you know, the crying where you know, you pop blood vessels like in your face, around your eyes, like that kind of crying. You know, where you're like hyperventilating and all that kind of stuff. But then after that release, there's this calm after the storm, and you feel stuffy, you feel gross, but you do feel better. You do feel lighter. You do feel relieved, right? To have gotten all that out. So that's kind of like a metaphor for how this goes. Like your shadow tries to comfort you in the only way that it knows how, you know, to the best of its capacity. And then for you, that's a difficult experience, but afterwards you do feel lighter, you do feel better. And I think that comes from unleashing your shadow and letting your shadow out. Letting your shadow feel the moonlight. Maybe not the sun, but at least the moonlight. And that awareness of your shadow, you know, your shadow being seen, right? Because a shadow tends to be ignored. It follows us around, but how often do we look back at our shadow? You turning to face your shadow enveloping you again, like just feeling that sense of freedom, feeling that sense of being uncaged, of being seen. Your shadow is kind of giving you a thank you for that. Like, thank you for validating that I exist. Like, thank you for not being someone to always ignore me. Thank you for seeing me. If I'm a little bit distracted, it's so awkward. The neighbor has decided to put this like couch patio thing like between their driveway and their sidewalk in their front yard. It's the most awkward placement ever. And so when I look out my window, I'm staring directly at them, and it's just super awkward. But I don't want to close the window because I need the light. So they're ruining my view. Anyway, okay. Sorry for that tangent. Because obviously I own the street, right? All right, so anyway, so I just wanted to get that message out of the way, because again, like that was coming through, and it's a very sweet message from your shadow, because again, like not everyone, most people never look into their shadow, right? Like, so the fact that you acknowledge your shadow and like are curious to know more about your shadow, it feels nice to them, you know, they like that. Now, back to your actual cards here. With this 3 of Cups and with this 10 of Cups and the 6 of Pentacles here, kind of feels like you have this feeling that almost like you have to give so much. So pile 1 had this theme where they had to work really, really hard, you know, and it was kind of like that core belief in CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, of incompetence. And if I were to look at your reading through a cognitive behavioral therapy lens, I would say that you have a core belief of being unlovable. And so, and you can look that up, you know, like CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, core beliefs. If you're curious about that, you can easily Google it. There are helpful videos on YouTube about it. But I would say that would be like your core belief. And so your core belief is something that you're not consciously aware of it. Like, unless you do work to figure it out and you go through CBT therapy, you wouldn't be consciously aware of it. So that is kind of how your shadow is showing up. Your shadow feels like, at my core, I am unlovable. There's something inherently unlovable about me. And it's the same as pile 1 of not feeling good enough, but it's manifesting in a different way. And that core belief results in your automatic thoughts, and your automatic thoughts are thoughts that just immediately come to you, again, like on autopilot. And those thoughts then results in our actions and our behavior and how we show up in the world and how we respond to different people and different interactions and what we're willing to try out and what we close ourselves off from. And so you can see how having a core belief of I'm not lovable would be really detrimental in your close relationships, because you would feel like, because I'm unlovable, I have to give more, I have to do more for others, I have to be here for others, I have to share more of myself, more of my resources with other people in order to earn that love. You feel like love is something that has to be earned. And it's almost like you have to buy it. And not saying like that could end up like, you spend a lot of money on your romantic partners as a way to, earn their love. But it can show up in different ways. Like, you feel like you have to do a lot. You could have a love language that is gift giving, or a love language that is acts of service. Like, you have to do a lot. You have to give your time, your energy. You're always offering so much compassion to other people. You're always the listener, You're always giving so much. And so then you end up in these relationships, romantically or platonically, with people who take. And you know that saying, givers have to set limits because takers rarely do? That's a good lesson for you to take home with you, because there is this theme of over-giving, and it's fueled by not feeling like you're lovable on your own, like you have to do extra to earn it, like love is something that has to be earned, not something that you are worthy of receiving just because you're a person, okay? And so with that 3 of Cups, you could find yourself in like third-party situations frequently. You may have had your heart broken because of cheating and lying and betrayal. You could have been disappointed in your friendships in the same way. With the 10 of Cups, it feels like, especially with the way it's depicted here, it's almost like you have this negative attitude of, if I'm vulnerable, if I'm opening up to other people, I'm opening myself up to poison. Is kind of like what it feels like. Like, you can't, there's a real issue here with trust. You don't trust yourself with other people. Maybe you're well aware that you overgive, and as a result, you kind of opt out of close friendships and romantic partnerships, and maybe you've even had to cut off certain family members because you know that you have trouble with setting those boundaries and saying no, so you would rather just opt out and not make yourself vulnerable to putting on those rose-colored glasses, getting fooled again, and overgiving and not feeling good enough, losing yourself in other people, defining yourself by those relationships, and then when they don't work out, you feel like crap about yourself. Yeah. Let's get into your oracle, because I don't want to keep repeating the same thing. And it's like, it's almost like there's also this sense of, you don't seem like someone who's afraid to do the inner work. Like, you're not afraid to go deep. You're not afraid to explore the darker side of your emotions or anything like that. But it's almost like maybe you pick at the wounds too much. Maybe you revisit the past hurts too much. You agonize over every little heartbreak, And I think it's because you're so sweet you have a very sweet shadow, so you're probably a very sweet person yourself. I think you're so sweet and you're so kind and you have a really strong moral compass, and you really always try to do right by people. You try to do the right thing. You know, a sense of like justice and honesty and truth is really important to you. And you just kind of, maybe especially in your youth, naively assumed that other people were operating from that same perspective. And when they weren't, I think it was quite a shock to you. And even if you had all this evidence in your life that people have a tendency to prioritize their own needs above maybe what's right, I think there was a sense of optimism and like this like clinging to hope and wanting things to work out so badly that you were willing to lie to yourself and ignore what was right in front of you, believing people's words instead of their actions, like when people show you who they are, believe them. And so when you came to realize that other people were not as concerned about justice and like morality as you were, then you thought, maybe I shouldn't even be interacting with other people in that way. Like maybe I shouldn't be so emotionally vulnerable. Maybe I shouldn't be so giving. And so it's like you kind of like went to another extreme. And so maybe as a result of that, you self-isolated, or you became really reserved, or you just decided to be single for a prolonged period of time, or you just, like I said, had to disconnect from certain family members. And maybe even just your view of the collective and humanity as a whole became a bit more pessimistic, and you kind of lost your sense of hope, your sense of faith in humanity. And that makes sense, especially if you look at current world events. Absolutely makes sense, like how that could happen. Even if we look at it on a macro level, can totally understand that. Pile 2, I've had a couple interruptions with your reading, and so you're gonna see like a couple weird jump cuts. I'm sorry about that. I really don't like to have those. All right, pile 2, let's find out who your shadow is. Pile 2, who is your shadow? Gracie, my cat, is supporting your reading right now. She's on her donut cat scratcher house. She looks so cute. It's always a good sign when Gracie comes and watches over your reading. She's a good omen. All right, pile 2, we've got Pioneer and we've got Warrior. For Pioneer shadow attribute, we have compulsive need to keep moving on. And then for Warrior shadow attribute, we have trading ethical principles for victory at any cost, indifference to the suffering inflicted on others. I feel like this is where you're at odds here with the world. Like it feels like this is your energy and this is the energy of the world, and like this is what you are trying to rebel against. But it's almost like as time has gone on, you've kind of sort of lost the will to fight. You've lost the will to participate. And it's kind of like your shadow has like pulled you back, pulled you into yourself. And I think you and your shadow, again, have a closer, more intimate relationship than definitely pile 1, but I would just say in general, most people. And it's not that your shadow is overtaking you, but it's just, again, like you're finding comfort in the shadow. And, it's sort of like running away, and so this may manifest with like you physically feeling restless, like you want to frequently move. But for others of you, it's just this emotional, mental restlessness. You may change friends frequently. You may find yourself really loving someone that you just met and feeling really inspired by the connection. And then sooner or later, those rose-colored glasses fall off and you become deeply disappointed in that person, and so you're just dissatisfied. The same thing, like you could start a new job and like really love it, and I think that's something there where you jump to these extremes, like you really love it. Instead of just waiting and seeing how you feel about it, you kind of jump to that conclusion instead of just waiting and feeling it out. So it feels like these high highs and these low lows. You're up and down. And so then you become dissatisfied, and then you may change your job because, again, once those rose-colored glasses fall away, they fall away hard, because your expectations are consistently too high. You expect too much from other people, and you expect other people to behave the way that you would behave. And that shows up across the board, I think, for you. You know that saying, like, if someone's not expressing love in the way that we do, we fear that love isn't there, instead of recognizing that people express love in different ways. I think you could apply that, like, to other areas of your life as well. Like, other people aren't necessarily motivated by the same things that you are. Other people don't have the same beliefs or values that you have. Other people are not, how do I put it here? Other people aren't necessarily speaking your language, okay? And so this assumption that other people should act and behave in the way that you think is right is what gets you into trouble. It creates that sense of disappointment with the world, because it feels like you versus the world. And that's why I think you retreat into your shadow, and your shadow pulls you back. And it's because you have this vision. I'm not saying that you're wrong, pile 2. I don't think that you're wrong at all. I think that you are a really innovative person, and that you're ahead of the curve. And so I think the way that you think and what you believe is ahead of the majority of the dominant culture, the mainstream culture. And so maybe in 10 years' time, other people will think and believe the way that you think and believe. But right now, you're so far ahead of the curve that you kind of feel like an alien. You just feel like you're not of this world. You're not for this world. You don't belong here. Maybe you identify as like a star seed. I don't know, honestly, a lot about star seeds, but I've just watched videos in passing on YouTube, but that may be something for you to look into. But it feels like you're not of this world, like you don't feel like you fit in, and it's you versus the world. And you view the world as this thing that attacks you, and this thing that isn't ethical, and this thing that is always focused on winning. And you're trying to innovate, you're trying to share, you're trying to love, and bring about this positive change. And it's like this thing that's like pushing you back. It's like every time you try to implement some sort of positivity into the world, there's this pushback. And so I think that plays out in a lot of different areas of your life. Definitely you could have grown up feeling like the black sheep in your family, feeling like you just didn't fit in. That could have been something that followed you through school. You didn't really identify with your classmates. You just felt like the odd one out. Maybe you have felt deeply misunderstood in your romantic connections. There's just this feeling of like, no, they don't get me. They don't understand me. If you've done the Myers-Briggs personality test, you could be an INFJ. I wouldn't be surprised by that. But yeah, it's just, and I say that because not only of the personality type itself, but because that's, I think, the least common, the most rare personality type. Okay. Pile 2, what do we need to know about your shadow? What would your shadow like to share with us today? Can we meet your shadow, please? Yes! I'm sorry, I got so excited. It says, thy wisdom befriends the honor in which weaves within blood a heroing call from the depths of your sacredness, the crone. You are wise beyond your years. You are wise beyond your generation. And that's where the difficulty is stemming. That's where it's coming from. People are not understanding the wavelength that you are on. Like, you're just, it's like you may as well speak an entirely different language, like metaphorically, than the people around you. They're just not getting it. And it's, as hard as this may sound, like, that's kind of the point. That's kind of the purpose. You are kind of meant to feel like the odd one out. That's how you become a leader. That's how you stand out from the crowd. What are you going to do with that? Are you going to be relegated to the shadows? Are you going to continue to find so much comfort in your shadow? Or are you going to step into the light and tell your shadow, I'm okay. You don't have to hold me back. I'm okay. We can do this together. But I need to step forward. And that's what it is. Like, you're meant to do big things. You have a big soul's purpose here. I have a soul's purpose reading that I will try my very best to link in the description box if I remember. Otherwise, though, you can just find it on my channel, or you can ask me if I forget in the comments. But yeah, I feel like you have a big soul's mission here. I do feel like even if it scares you, you're meant to be a leader, an innovator in some way. You have some sort of big idea, a fresh perspective that is so needed. And that's the thing, is that you are so needed, and you are so undervaluing yourself and feeling like a freak. Like, you feel like a freak. You again, like, you just feel so like where are my people is what I'm hearing. Like, where are my people? You feel like a man without a home, you know, a person without a home. You don't feel like you have any place to go back to. Like, you're just roaming aimlessly, and you don't know where you fit in is the issue. But you're not meant to fit in, and that, I think, is what is driving you a little bit crazy. Or at least your shadow a little bit crazy. We have frost. Ice cold melting in time, a frozen glance at what lies behind, what lies ahead, what lies within, and the chilling frost of thy undead. You do feel like you're left out in the cold, and I think that sort of like, rather than letting people push me away, rather than feeling like that black sheep and feeling like ostracized, I'm going to make that decision for myself and leave before I can get pushed out. So that could show up in different ways for each of you. This is a general reading, but for some of you, you may break up with someone before you can get left. You know, you may be single for a prolonged period of time because you don't want, you know, that fear of rejection is there. You may not engage with a parent or a caregiver because you would rather reject them before they can reject you. You could have an avoidant attachment style. You know, you could quit a job because you think they're going to fire you anyway. Things like that. You know, you could just quit things, leave things before those things have a chance to reject you. And it also kind of feels like there's a lot of almost like this feeling of stasis, like this feeling of stagnancy, like almost like you see it as this is the way it has always been and this is the way it always will be. It's frozen. Like a perpetual winter of your life. Like, this is just, it is what it is. You know, I've always had this dynamic with my parents. I will always have that dynamic with my parents. I will always get my heart broken. I will always be lied to. I will always be taken advantage of because that's all I've ever known and that's all I can expect. And that's probably a response to having those high expectations, getting disappointed, and deciding to not have any expectations at all. You oscillate between these different extremes. That's what it is. Like, you get, it's like you started off so happy and optimistic and full of hope and so naive, and now you've gone to this other extreme of feeling so jaded, so just so done. Like, you're done with the world. You're just done with it. And Spirit is saying, it's time to hug your shadow and say, we've got to start again. Like, your soul is being called to something, and it's time to step up, and let the dead be the dead, let it go. It's almost like you started a healing journey, and it's like you're so close to closing it out, but for some reason you stopped moving. That's what it feels like. It feels like maybe you started to do the shadow work, but then you stayed in it. Yep. It's time to get moving again. It's time to get moving again. We've got Starry Canyon, look for the light in the dark, optimism, hope, inspiration. Yeah, like, I think you may already be in the process of doing this shadow work. But Spirit is saying, like, good, but you can't live there. You can't grow so comfortable with your shadow that you can't let it go. Yeah. There's really, with this card here, there's really this call for you to have this sort of reset. Because at one point in time, you and your shadow were one, right? And then as time went on, this split occurs, right? And it feels like you have tried to reconcile with your shadow, and you have developed this relationship with your shadow, but it's almost like you've gotten so close to your shadow that you sort of have difficulty now. It's helpful to integrate your shadow, right? But it's almost like, again, like your shadow's overtaking, where it should be half and half. It feels like the pendulum has swung too far in the other direction. And so I love that you have halfway point here, meet in the middle, compromise, common ground, reconciliation. It's time to find that middle ground between yourself and your shadow. Find that midpoint. I'm going to get up and close the door. There's going to be so many jump cuts in your reading, and I apologize for that. Okay. Yeah, there needs to be a middle ground here. This going back and forth between these different extremes is the influence of your shadow. And so Spirit is saying, like, don't lose yourself in the process of healing. Don't lose yourself in this deep, dark shadow work, because we know it's heavy. We know it's hard, but don't lose yourself in that process. And that song, that Nirvana song, the lyrics are comfort in being sad. Like, I like the comfort, something with comfort in being sad. That one line is sticking out to me. You have found comfort in the sadness. You have, because you know what that is. You know what to expect from that. There's no surprises, and it's manageable, right? And so it's almost like to try for hope and optimism and happiness and inspiration again feels like I'm setting myself up for disappointment. So maybe I'm not going to do that. Maybe I'm just going to stay here with my shadow, because there's comfort in this sadness. I've come to know it very well. I'm familiar with it, and it's what I know. And change is hard, And so that's kind of like the energy I feel like you're in, and Spirit's kind of gently pushing you out of that. And again, like, it's good to integrate your shadow. It's good to do shadow work. It's good to try to heal and do all of those things, but you can't live in that. Eventually, you have to rejoin the world, and it's time to rejoin the world. All right, let's get your zodiac sign. So this is going to be the astrological sign that your shadow is showing up as. So pile 2. What zodiac sign is your shadow showing up as? Pisces. That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. So Pisces is a very psychic sign, and it's ruled by Neptune, and it's very dreamy, very it's the unseen, it's hard to know what's real and what's not real. You know, it's very like dreamy and ethereal and emotional. And they say that Pisces is like the Gemini of the water signs. You know, it's 2 fish swimming in opposite directions, right? And that's how I feel like your dynamic is with your shadow. One of these fish is you, and the other fish is your shadow. And it's funny here that they're swimming in opposite directions, but they are circling each other. And so it feels like that's why you're moving from one extreme to another, but you're also never going anywhere. There's no positive direction, no positive movement. There's no movement in any direction because you're just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And that is why I think that it's quite difficult for you to feel that stability, feel that groundedness, because I do think you operate from your higher chakras. I think you have a tendency to feel more comfortable in a daydream than you would in real life. And so that would also sort of explain why you feel so different. In the zodiac wheel, Pisces is at the very end. Pisces is the 12th sign. And so some people theorize, some astrologers theorize that you have, if you're a Pisces, have completed past lives in all the other preceding signs. So you've gone from Aries all the way to Pisces. You've been Aries in a past life. You've reconciled that karma, learned your lessons, you've advanced. Your soul is very evolved by the time you get to Pisces. You know, Aries is the baby, and as you move through the zodiac wheel, you go through sort of like your soul metaphorically goes through adulthood, and then you go on to, like I said, the spiritual side of it. But you've gone through Aries, you've gone through Taurus, you've gone through Gemini, Cancer, so on and so forth. I won't name all the signs, but you get what I'm saying. So that would explain why, at a soul level, you've achieved quite a lot, and you're a very evolved soul. And so that's why you have this unique perspective, this more evolved perspective, why you're more emotionally mature, spiritually mature than the average person. And that makes you feel like a freak, that makes you feel like a weirdo, that makes you feel different, that makes you feel used, abused, taken advantage of. You feel like you're too soft for this world. So you'd rather live in your dreams. You'd rather live in the spiritual realm. You don't want to be here. Or at least your shadow doesn't. Yeah. And I think Pisces as well have a real trouble. They have a real trouble with sort of deciding which way to go, what to do. It even says indecisiveness on here. But when you're being pulled in 2 opposite directions, the idea of finding a middle ground is kind of like an aha moment, because there's so much pulling towards 2 opposite ways that you almost forget that there is even a third option of just staying in the middle. And so if you take away anything from this, it would be, where in my life can I find a sense of compromise? Where in my life am I reacting in a way that is one extreme or the other. How can I find a middle ground in my life? That I think would be a helpful starting place for you. I would also say that I think it's very, very cute that we had the moon come up for your major arcana, and then we have Pisces as your zodiac sign, because you can see here, Pisces is the sign that is associated with the moon. So I just find that very cute. And a perfect way to like round out and end your reading. So like I was telling pile 1, or if you skip the intro, I was planning on doing a self-care reading like at the end, but I'm gonna just have it as a separate video and upload it on the same day, because I don't want this video to be so long, but I feel better about uploading a shadow reading if I'm also uploading a self-care reading, because I know shadow readings can be really tough. So be on the lookout for that self-care reading if you're interested. I highly recommend it. It's going to be short and to the point. It's not going to be crazy long or anything like that. Probably like a 10-minute reading at most. But yes, so this was your reading pile 2. I hope it resonated. I hope it gave you exactly what you need in this moment, whatever you were searching for. Comfort, clarity, encouragement, support, whatever. I hope it gave you what you needed. That's always my intention with these videos. But please consider liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, hitting the notification bell so you always know when I upload. Please consider watching the ads as well. That's the easiest way to support the channel, and I'm so grateful to any of you who choose to do any of those things that I just listed. And I will see you guys in my next one. Take care, pile 2. Again, a huge thank you to the subscriber who suggested this reading, and I will see you guys in my next one. Hi pile 3, welcome to your reading. So let's get started. Let's meet your shadow. And a big thank you to my guides and your guides for coordinating these messages. And a big thank you to your shadow self for introducing themselves today and sharing these messages with us. So let's find out who your shadow is. Now, I'm going to be uploading a self-care reading on the same day that this video uploads. I was going to include it at the end of this reading, but I didn't want the video to be too long, and so I was kind of just playing it by ear, but it looks like each pile is probably going to be close to 40 minutes long, so I didn't want anything to be too long. So for those of you interested, just be on the lookout for that self-care reading. Like I said, it will upload on the same day as this reading. All right, pile 3. Let's meet your shadow. What do we need to know, pile 3? What do we need to know about your shadow? Pile 3. My little brother got this deck for me this past Christmas, so I'm really excited to be using it in a video for the first time. Let's see. The moon came out in pile 2 as well. All right, so pile 3, we have Temperance, we have the 10 of Presents or the 10 of Pentacles, we have the Moon, and we have the High Priestess. So you have 3 major arcana to start off. So it feels kind of similar to pile 2 in this way, where you have, I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to close my window. The neighbor across the street, like, I don't know what they do, but they just kind of wander around their yard, or they sit in their yard, and that's their business. But it's super awkward when I'm trying to film and I'm facing the window, and yeah, anyway, they're ruining my view. Okay, so similar to pile 2, it feels like your shadow is like you have more of an awareness, you have a closer relationship to your shadow. You're not completely oblivious to your shadow. And I say that because we have this major arcana energy here. Feels like there is a push and pull between your shadow, but it feels like you listen to your shadow a lot more than the average person. And I say that because we have temperance here. So I do feel like pile 3 kind of makes sense that you chose the black nail polish. You know, there's this sort of an acceptance of your shadow. You know, you don't push your shadow away. You don't, you know, feel so much shame about having your shadow. You kind of just accept that this is a part of life. You know, like we all have parts of ourselves that are difficult to look at. You know, we all have a shadow. We all have things about ourselves that, you know, maybe we wish we could change, but there is sort of this acceptance of it, right? Like nobody is perfect, like you understand that. And so there's balance here. I feel like you handle your shadow with grace. It feels like you're very kind to your shadow. It feels like when it comes to having fears and, you know, this recognition of like when your ego is talking and when it's your soul talking with the high priestess, like it feels like you're able to discern that pretty well. You know, and it feels like, you see sort of how she's mixing a potion here? It feels like you know when your ego is speaking up, how that's meant to help you. When your shadow is speaking up, how is that meant to help you? Like, what is that fear? What is that guilt? What is that shame? Like, what is that trying to tell you? How is this meant to have a deeper relationship with your soul? You know, like what my worst impulses, where do those come from? Why is that? How can I reconcile that? You know? So it doesn't feel like you're a passive observer of your shadow, you know, or that you're pushing your shadow away. It feels like you see your shadow, you understand that like you're meant to have this process of integration, you know, so you don't push your shadow away. And with all that being said, though, you don't always understand when your shadow comes out to play. You don't always understand like what the motivation is. Like you don't always understand why you behave the way that you do. We have the moon here, but I do think you try to understand with the high priestess. You know, you have this sense of curiosity, I feel like, when it comes to self-exploration. I want to get a clarifier for this 10 of Pentacles because we have so much here about the unseen and grace and faith and spirituality and intuition. And then right in the middle of all of it, we have something that's very grounded, something that's very earthy energy. So I actually just want to clarify it and see if we can get some information here about why is this 10 of Pentacles showing up, this 10 of Presents. And I know so far we've just talked about your dynamic with your shadow, but I think that's important to, your guides are telling me like it's important to acknowledge that because it's a real strength. Like how you handle your shadow is a real strength. Can we clarify the 10 of Presents, please, Spirit? The 7 of Needles. One more card, please, Spirit. Now, needles in this deck refers to the swords. And the Knight of Presents here, or the Knight of Pentacles. Okay. It kind of feels like your shadow feels like it was lied to. Like there's a part of yourself that feels like you were sold a dream. Like you were, it kind of feels like you sort of feel like the dominant culture conned you a little bit. Like, you know, the idea of like the American dream. And you don't have to be from America for this to resonate, but just that idea that if you work hard enough, if you put in enough effort, you can succeed, you can do anything, right? And we know that's not really true. Like, we know it doesn't really work out that way. And you may have even started off your life in a place of material abundance. You may have come from a wealthier background and you were taught like you can replicate this success if you follow this blueprint, and you're finding out that's not really the case. And so you kind of feel like that sense of security, that sense of like, oh, I have a roadmap to success. You kind of feel like you were lied to in that way. And so that's why I feel like you lean so much into that faith and spirituality and intuition, because you almost sort of feel like when you try to work hard and put in a lot of effort, there's this pushback and things don't go quite according to plan. And so you almost kind of get into this feeling of like, why try? Like, I'm just going to pray about it. I'm just going to try to manifest it. I'm not even going to keep hitting this same wall. But what that can result in sometime is this sense of complacency and sort of this idea that, you know, even if I get something, it's going to be stolen. Like with the way the snake is like curling around these presents, in just the fact that we have the Seven of Swords here, the Seven of Needles, this is a card of like betrayal, okay? This is a card of someone stealing something from you, someone lying to you, someone deceiving you. And, you know, take what resonates, because for some of you, your shadow could be the one who feels like if they don't, and this could be like just a message for just a few of you, but like your very worst impulse could be that if you feel like you don't, if you feel like you don't assert your own will and assert your own needs, then you won't get anything. Kind of like this idea that if I don't take something, I'll never get it. And so if that means stepping on other people's toes or other people's dreams or putting other people down in some capacity, then I'm going to do that because that's what winners do. And, you know, like if I don't put myself first, if I don't act selfishly right now, someone else is just going to take this prize. Again, that could just be for a few of you. I think for the majority of you, though, it's just this idea that like I was sold a dream and I was told that if I worked hard enough and I did this, that, and the third, I would be successful, I would be content, I would be sitting back, relaxing, counting my presents. You can see like with the clipboard here, like this happy elf, like just sitting back, relaxing, counting my presents, everything's all accounted for. But in reality, there's this snake that's stealing these presents like right from under my nose, and that's where that Seven of Swords comes in. And so it's like it's a pinprick to the heart, you know, like it's a sense of disappointment, this sense of being lied to, of being betrayed. I think that's for the majority of you. For others of you, your shadow is that Seven of Swords and you're taking things from other people. But again, that may just be for a few of you, because I know that's a pretty intense message. But yeah, it feels like this overwhelming kind of sense of disappointment here. We have the Queen of Swords and we have the, let's see here. Yeah, I was second guessing myself here. The Eight of Potions or the Eight of Cups. Oh, absolutely. I'm glad we took two more tarot. This is someone who, yes, is like ambitious and smart and capable and intelligent, but this is someone paired right here with the Eight of Cups that's had to walk away from a lot. And so it feels like for so many of you, and remember, this is talking about energy, this isn't talking about gender, this is just divine femininity here, but it feels like the Queen of Swords really values communication, right? So it feels like she bought into this dream, she bought into this story, she bought into this narrative, and she's having to walk away from it. She's having to understand that that dream she was sold was a lie. And so it feels like your shadow is sort of reveling in that heartbreak of like what you've had to walk away from. And it feels like your shadow clings to what you had to walk away from. Like your shadow still wants to believe in that dream that if they work hard enough, they can get somewhere. They can get to that 10 of presents. And it's just not the case. It's just not the case. What have you had to walk away from? What is your shadow clinging to? What is your shadow clinging to? Ace of Cups or Ace of Potions here. And the way this is a butterfly here makes me feel like your shadow is still clinging to this idea of transformation, that things can change if you just put in that effort. And so it feels like your shadow is feeling this sense of depletion, like almost like your shadow feels like we can't love ourselves. We can't really love ourselves until we achieve this dream. And you are wanting to move away from this dream because you understand this dream is kind of like it's something that's not even worth believing in because it's not true. You know, like there's so much that plays into it. We know now as a society about like what privilege looks like. We all know that we don't start from the same starting place. We all know that unexpected events can turn our lives on its head and send us into a tailspin. We know this, right? Like we know that there are so many challenges and difficulties that even hard work sometimes can't overcome, that even intelligence and raw talent sometimes cannot overcome. And that's the cycle of life. But it feels like your shadow still clings to that. Like your shadow is waiting for a miracle to happen. Like if we just put in enough hard work, the universe will bless us. But it feels like you're understanding that no, like the more we push back, the more we get of the same. And so it's sort of like this push and pull between you and your shadow. You know, your shadow's like, you're not working hard enough, you're not doing enough. And you're like, we're hitting a wall. And the more that we try to cling to this, the more we try to grab it, the more we push it away. I saw a video like on my home feed on YouTube before I started your reading, and I think that was for a reason now. I didn't watch the video, but you know how you see the previews on YouTube? It was showing me how like an example of like when you try to pet a skittish cat, and the more you try to go towards that cat, the cat will run away, right? The cat will always be like beyond your grasp, but the more you move towards it, the more the cat moves away. And so this dream, this false dream you were sold, is kind of like the cat, right? But if you were just to sit down and do something else for a little while and distract yourself and not focus so intently on that goal, the cat maybe would come around and maybe you could pet it then. You know, if you would stop moving and scaring it away, if you would just sit down, the cat might eventually come over to you, right? And you would get the desired goal, right, of petting the cat without having to put in so much effort. And so that I feel like is what you're trying to tell your shadow, and your shadow is like pushing this back. And so yeah, it feels like this wish fulfillment that you've been wanting, is just out of reach. And it would be so much easier to achieve it if you weren't trying the same method over and over and over again. And I think you're starting to have that realization because you are the high priestess here. You are starting to have that realization of what you're doing wrong and how to start changing that. Kind of like your shadow is clinging to old ways, old methods. Let's see, pile 3 here. What do we need to know about your shadow? What do we need to know about your shadow? Okay, so we have networker and we have prince. Conveys information only for personal gain, spreads fear and falsehood. And we have prince, using power for self-aggrandizement. I hope I said that right. This prince card, you see how he's holding the flowers behind his back? It's almost like you have this feeling that there are the haves and the have-nots. And, I'm sorry, have-nots. I feel like I slurred my words there a little bit. And it's almost like you feel like this prize is just out of your reach, like someone's holding it behind their back, and they're just not telling you the way to get there. You know, you kind of just feel, I feel like you've almost gone through this series of moments in your life where you've sought out different mentors, you know, like whatever your goal is, whatever you're trying to achieve, whatever that like one deep like heart's truest wish, truest dream that you have, however that 10 of Pentacles shows up for you, whatever that dream is, you almost have been through like this series of like, well, if I just listen to this person, if I just follow the way this person did it, then I'll get there. And it feels like you've been disappointed and you kind of feel like a bit cheated, like, again, like someone told me if I just did this, I would get there. And it's almost like you listen to everyone else's advice on how to do something because that shadow is pushing and pushing you. Whereas if you slow down and listen to your intuition, because you are a very intuitive person, it would be a little bit easier for you. But I feel like it's harder for you to discern because you are so connected to your shadow when your shadow is speaking and when your soul is speaking. And with this networker card, again, it feels like you've asked so many people that you would admire and put on a pedestal, how do I get there? How do I do this? And it doesn't mean like directly asking people. This could be you doing research online, listening to other people talk, and like videos on YouTube would be an example. Like, how did this person do it? How can I do it? Following different people that you idolize essentially and trying to figure out how. And it's almost like they're telling me like false prophets, like like you can see like all the letters here spinning around her and she's like running a race. It kind of feels like you've taken on these like false messages, and really you should just listen to yourself, listen to your own inner guidance. But it's like you don't trust your own inner guidance, and so you're always seeking messages externally. You're seeking answers in the external world because you're trying to get to this place. You're trying to get what he's hiding behind his back here. Like the people that you admire, the people that you would put on like, this is royalty, this is something to aspire to. Those type of people, the lifestyle that they're living, you're trying to get there, but it feels like it's out of reach. It feels like something is being hidden from you. How is your shadow showing up, pile 3? What do we need to know? How is your shadow showing up? Pile 3, what do we need to know? And even just the colors here, it feels like you need to get in touch with your higher chakras. We have candle magic. Finger the spine and caress thy lips. Light the spell spilling from your grip. Spilling from your grip, like you're holding on to this idea so tightly. And it's like you're being lost in this spiral, going down, down, down. Like you get so confused, you get so turned around. Like right when you think that you know the answer, you're following this light. But where is this light leading? It's going nowhere. It's just funneling downward. This path isn't going anywhere. You're running in circles. Yep. This is the light to follow, not this one. We have star. Follow the stars, for they know best. Not too light, not too dark, a shimmer of what is coming next. A sense of hope. It's almost like you're afraid to hope. You've had so much disappointment that you're afraid to hope. It's again like this feeling of like, every time I've got my hopes up in the past, every time that I thought I had finally found the answer of how to get where I'm trying to go, it was a false light. It was a false prophet. It was my shadow speaking. It was trying the same old method a different way, and I wasn't getting anywhere. But following that inner light, looking inward and stop looking towards the external for answers, that's what's going to get you where you need to go. Hope. Having hope again. Allowing yourself to have hope again. Feeling like you deserve to be hopeful. You deserve to dream a brighter future. It doesn't have to always feel so out of reach. And hope. You equate hope with disappointment. Like hope may be a little bit of a difficult word for you. And I also feel like sometimes you're so focused on how you think something should happen, or you have a very limited perspective and you're like, this can only occur if this, that, and the third happens. And you can't zoom out and see the larger picture, and you don't trust spirit to handle their part of the deal. And that's, you're micromanaging spirit. And it's that shadow like coming up and doing that. Like your shadow has a little bit of a control issue there. That grip. Your shadow's holding on to you too tightly. And your shadow doesn't need to do that. Your shadow will always be with you. It doesn't need to hold on so tight. And so, it's kind of this message that you may get what you want in a really unexpected way, but you need to step back and allow that process to happen, because pile 3, you have done enough. You have done enough. We have alien planet, make yourself at home, adaptability, change, and originality. All we have is now. You are so focused on what went wrong in the past and how you can control the outcome in the future. And what you need to do is key into this present moment. That's the only way to look inward, is to be present in this moment. Be adaptable, be flexible in your understanding of how these things can come to pass. Allow spirit to engage with you, co-create with you. Allow spirit to get creative with you. Be adaptable to these changes. Don't be so rigid in your thinking that something can only happen one certain way. We have Peachy Paradise, enjoy the view in front of you, happiness, contentment, and gratitude. And that's part of the problem as well. If we think of the 10 of Pentacles, if you have that energy, that should be enough. That's not a card of insane wealth. It's not really a card that's talking about insane abundance. It's talking about having enough and being content with having enough. And that may be part of the problem. You may get what you want and feel quickly dissatisfied with it and not understand why it doesn't feel as good as you thought it would. And we can all relate to this, right? Like you could, for example, see a purse online that you really, really want, and it's so beautiful and it's so expensive, and then you finally are able to purchase it, and it comes in the mail and it's just as beautiful as you thought it would, but then that initial happiness wears off pretty quickly, right? And if you're used to getting nice things all the time, that turnaround period is even faster, right? And so you become quickly dissatisfied with what you have, and you become even more separated from your gratitude, right? Like, we know this logically. We know that someone could live in a mansion and have everything they could ever want at their fingertips and still feel unhappy. And that's not an issue of not having enough. That's an issue of gratitude. Okay? And then we know someone who has half of that amount of stuff who can feel so grateful and so happy and so content. And it's all about perspective. So maybe take a hard look at yourself and say, like, what areas of my life am I taking for granted because I'm so single-mindedly trying to pursue this one thing that I don't have, this one goal, this one thing that I've put above everything else? How is that keeping me from being grateful for what I do have? And we have Sky Library. Learn from your past lessons, guidance, and wisdom. Don't repeat the same mistake over and over again. Learn from your past trials. Learn from your past errors. Okay? And it's even like if you go inward enough, you could even learn from past lives, like this ancestral karma also that you may have inherited, the mistakes from your parents and their parents and their parents. If you notice any repeating cycles in your family, it may be up to you to break it. It may be up to you to break that perpetuating cycle. But I also feel like there's something there about looking inward, learning from your past selves, learning from your past mistakes, and starting to enjoy the view in front of you, starting to have an appreciation for yourself that you've went through everything that you've gone through, I mean, no one can say that you haven't tried, pile 3. Like, that's the thing. Like, if you're feeling like you're being really hard on yourself, You were trying. Like, everything that we've been saying so far has been that you have put in the effort. Your efforts may have felt wasted, but if you shift your perspective and say, I can learn from this, now I have found all the ways that it won't work, now I am closer to understanding the way that it will work. But I think also understanding that it isn't all up to you and you're not all on your own. There are factors happening outside of you that have nothing to do with your direct control. You only have so much control. And if you trick yourself into believing that you have full control over your destiny and what happens to you, you are setting yourself up for a lot of self-criticism. For example, if a hurricane comes and destroys your home, are you at fault for that? Could you possibly have prepared for that? To an extent. But, I mean, there's no way for you to move every single thing that you own out of your home. No way for you to build a fortress around your home to protect it from the hurricane. Like, no way. Like, you can save yourself and your pets and a couple, like, possessions, and you may be able to stop, like, some of the damage to your home, but no amount of preparation would fully protect you from that level of a force of nature. And so that's a very obvious example, but hurricanes can come into our lives in different ways, right? Like in a metaphorical sense, there are hurricanes. There are things that happen that are unexpected, that make us feel like the rug has been pulled out from under us, and that's not our fault. And if you beat yourself up and you think, what could I have done differently? What could I have done? Hindsight is 20/20. Don't be so hard on yourself that you debilitate yourself and you have this sort of low self-esteem and this feeling like you always mess up. I always mess up. I always make a mistake. I can never do anything right. And I work so hard and I get nowhere, and I see these other people not working as hard as me and they're above me. And, and putting things into hierarchies and sitting here and feeling like because you haven't achieved, this, that, and the third, I keep saying that. Maybe there's 3 things that you're wanting really badly. Maybe it's because you're pile 3. I don't know. But because you don't have these things that you think you should have, you put yourself at a lower place. You put other people above you because you see them having these things that you want. And no one is above you and no one is below you. So it's that need to value yourself. And not defining yourself by these external markers. All right, let's get a zodiac sign to represent your shadow. What astrological sign is your shadow most represented by pile 3? Aquarius. No wonder. No wonder. Bottom of the deck, we have Capricorn. No wonder. Especially because we had alien planet here. There's this feeling of feeling like an outsider and feeling like what works for the collective isn't working for you. And feeling like you put in all this hard work and effort and you have this vision and you think that these 2 energies together should make you unstoppable, right? And you can't seem to accept that you're not invincible. I feel like this fear of failure is so innate to your shadow. Your shadow is overwhelmed, and every time you feel like you haven't succeeded at something, it's like your shadow really takes that to heart, and your shadow just gets a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger. And when I say that, I'm talking about your shadow's energy and your shadow's kind of grip on you, and your shadow keeps saying it's almost like, how some people have a fear of failure and so they stop trying? For you, it's almost like your fear of failure pushes you to try again too quickly. Rather than taking a step back, assessing, and sort of really engaging in some self-reflection and figuring out should I even keep trying at this, or should I try a different way, or anything like that. It's almost like you're so quick to try again that you're not learning from that mistake, because you can't take that failure and you're trying so quickly to remedy that failure that you keep hitting a wall. Like, if you would just take some time out, take a breather, pull back a bit, and understand that your actions, like these mistakes that you feel like you've made, are just that. Like, they have nothing to do with your character, your self-worth, your abilities. They're just your mistakes. They're just actions. They're just behaviors. They are not anything to do with your value as a person. And so, yeah, it's just like you can't take that feeling of being lesser than. But no one is making you feel that way but yourself. And even if other people are telling you that you're not enough, or that you're a failure, or that, you always mess up, it is your choice to listen and to take that as truth, because those are lies. You are more than enough. And you can even see here, stubborn, workaholic, pessimistic, stubborn, impulsive, like, yeah, you're not taking that time out. You just keep hitting the same wall. All right, so pile 3. This was your reading. I hope it resonated. I hope it brought you what you needed. I hope it helped you understand your shadow a bit better. Again, be on the lookout for that self-care reading. And yeah, please consider liking, commenting, sharing, and subscribing, hitting the I'm stuttering. Hit the notification bell so you always know when I upload. The easiest way to support the channel is to watch the ads or do any of the other things that I asked of you. I appreciate anyone who chooses to do any of those things. It means so much to me. It's been really cool to see our community grow, and yeah, best of luck to you with this pile 3. I know shadow readings can be difficult, so thank you for letting me do this reading for you. A huge thank you to the subscriber who suggested this topic, and yeah, I'll see you guys in my next one. Best of luck to you. Take care, pile 3.